Hey folks, this is episode number 223 of Just Another Fanboy. This is Wheel of Time, Season 1, Part 1. And guess what, folks? I'm not alone for this one. Hello and welcome to another episode of Just Another Fanboy. I'm your host. My name is Steven. And I'm not going to beat around the bush because this is a long freaking episode. This past weekend, I sat down with indie nerdcore rapper Sulfur, the guy behind the Wheel of Rhyme EP that is based on the Wheel of Time books. And we got together on Skype and we talked about the Wheel of Time Season 1 from over on Amazon Prime. And we talked for 2.5 hours. Now, after I did some editing and cut some of it down and took some stuff out that had not a lot to do with the subject at hand, I was still looking at almost 2 hours. And I just couldn't bring myself to put out an episode at this point that's over 2 hours long. So I'm cutting it almost in half. So you're going to get part 1 today, and then you're going to get part 2 next Thursday. We're going to have another episode in between. Hopefully I'm going to be talking about ElfQuest in the next episode on Tuesday, and then we'll come back on Thursday to get part 2 of Season 1 of the Wheel of Time, featuring myself and Sulfur talking about the show on Amazon Prime. Did we like it? Did we hate it? What was our nitpicks? What did we love? Well, hang out, because you're going to hear a lot of it here in just a bit. I will warn you, there's spoilers. If you have not watched the show and you've never read the books, you're going to get spoiled. We're going to spoil some stuff. We're talking about the season in depth, and we are all over the place. So it's not like we're starting with episode 1, and then if you're not going to get episode 8 of the show until part 2. No, we are jumping all over the place. So just be warned and enjoy. Here you go. This is me and Sulfur talking about the Wheel of Time, Season 1, or at least part of it. The Wheel of Time, Season 1.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I tried to rewatch it yesterday, and I started too late and realized I'm not going to be able to watch 8 episodes tonight. What was I thinking? But I think I got through the first 3 episodes again. So let me just ask you, what did you think? Just your general feeling about the season, about the show.
General overview feeling about the show. I liked it. I may even love it. Yeah. But I think that's my general feeling. I think it's in the love realm. I definitely enjoyed it a lot. I think I have some bones to pick with it. Probably not the same as I've heard repeated over and over and over again from certain people. But yeah, I did enjoy it. How about yourself?
I really enjoyed it too. There were moments where I wasn't quite sure, and I'll be interested to hear the bones that you have to pick, because I have a couple as well. Sure. But I think in general, I think they did a really good job of touching on some of the main story points.
Okay.
But then when they kind of veered away from the story, they really veered away.
Yes.
It's like, we're going to make sure that this is true to the story and this is true to the story, but let's take this and just do something completely different. Let's just do the opposite of how it was in the book. And some of that I really liked. Some of it made sense. And some of it I was just like, oh, all right. I don't know if that was necessary, but
sure.
But yeah, in general, I really did like it. And I think it's only going to get better in the second season.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree. One thing I noticed consistently through the first season, and I think it's going to spill over into the second season, and fingers crossed, hopefully the entire duration of the show, the 8 projected seasons, I believe, is the main consensus there. Mm-hmm. But I noticed a lot of the nags that people had in those first 3 episodes were resolved as the show continued to go, and even before the show came out, you heard all these complaints about, Rand's the Dragon Reborn. Why are they? Oh, spoilers, by the way.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'll when I do my opening, I'll make sure and let everybody know we're going to spoil the crap out of this. Both
perfect.
The books. Both the books and the show. I don't think it's going to be possible for you and I to talk about this show without talking about how it relates to the books, but that's just going to happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it's not even a spoiler for the books, kind of a spoiler for the show. Yeah, Rand's the Dragon Reborn. But before the show, everybody was upset that there's this mystery that they built around who is the Dragon Reborn.
Yeah.
And Rand is clearly the Dragon Reborn. And it was almost disappointing to see all these, long-term book fans just ruining this element for newcomers, because that was fun to me. I enjoyed the fact that they made it a mystery. I enjoyed the fact that Egwene and, Nynaeve were Taviran, essentially, and in the mix for that. I liked those things a lot, so I did enjoy that.
Yeah, I was really confused about that at first, because I was still very much in book mode. I'm like, why are they trying to hide the fact that Rand is the dragon? What? Oh, so we're going to have to, we already know it's Rand. And then I realized, wait a minute, how many people are watching this that have never read the books? And so basically they introduced one of those elements to the show where people who have never read the books will be able to go online each week and go, well, maybe it looks like Nynaeve is the dragon. You saw what she did at the end of that episode. And so I think they just added a fun, water cooler element to the show for people to talk about.
Sure. And that's what I enjoyed so much about it. And that's why I say in time, I do feel like a lot of the nitpicks, a lot of the nags could really smooth themselves out. Yeah. That was a really early one I heard even before the show came out, and it was clearly still Rand, as it went. I think, for example, Matt's story will still be rather intact when we come back to season 2. And I know Rafe, even in interviews, has said that it's pretty much going to pick up around book 3 for Matt, which is super exciting for me, because that's when Matt becomes my favorite character. So
yeah, I've just started listening to book 3. So
nice.
Yeah, that's he becomes healed. And he's hanging out at Tar-Valon, as they say on the show. That threw me, Tar-Valon. And then, listening to the books, when they mention Ghiladon, they pronounce it as like, I can't even remember how they pronounce Ghiladon, but I had to, what did they just say? I had to put on the credits, and that's okay. So, but they did you watch any of the bonus stuff?
A little bit. I have not finished it. I hate to say I haven't finished all of it, but I did watch probably about 3 of them, I want to say. I know I watched the one for Luke Theron, and there's a couple others. Wasn't there one about Ogier, or am I making that up?
There is, and they don't look at all like Loyal did in the show. So that was kind of weird. Yeah, those I was able to watch all the origins. I ended up watching those yesterday. Mm-hmm. But they've also got a few like behind the scenes kind of stuff, and I guess Robert Jordan's wife was there for some of it. So they did have her there. So I'm going to go ahead and just say that however they pronounce stuff in the show, since his wife was there, that's how it's pronounced. That's just how it's going to be going forward. So instead of Tar-Valon, it's Tar-Valon.
I'm cool with it. I think Tar-Valon sounds awesome, quite honestly. So I'm totally cool with it. I just remember we had this conversation on the previous podcast when we got to chat. So I actually laughed out loud the first time that they pronounced it in the show, because I thought about that. I was like, oh no.
And another way to pronounce it, another argument to be had online.
Exactly. Well, it kind of settles the arguments online going forward.
Yeah, so. That's true. Because that's where people are going to point to as well. This is how they say it on the show. So that's how it is.
Exactly. If Harriet stamped off on it, if Brandon stamped off on it, I feel pretty good about it.
That's right. So let's go ahead and let's get the negative out of the way, because in general, we both really like the show.
Sure.
So what were some of your nitpicks?
Okay. So I can give specific examples, but my nitpicks actually are kind of front to back, a little encompassing, to be honest. Watching the show, there were 2 things that really stood out to me in the negative aspect. One is pacing, and some episodes are worse than others. A lot of people have criticized, let's say, the first episode or the 8th episode in terms of pacing, and I really do feel like they're not just bringing that out of thin air. I can see that pacing happening super quick, like a specific example right there at the end of the first episode. Everything happens. Two Rivers and Emmons Field are kind of reduced to ash before it's over with, as we know. But it was just so quick that they left with Moraine. Not really a second kind of,
they didn't mess around.
Not at all. Not one line about should we do this? Not a second to reconsider. And it's a moment before you see Rand actually have any problems at all. And they kind of paint him as the jerk for having those issues in that moment as well. But, just thinking about any human person in that scenario, you would at least have one thing to say maybe before you abandon your entire life and leave with a complete stranger. So, the pacing in certain moments felt really, really just super rushed. I understand what they're trying to do, and I do respect it. But it's present. It was there. And then the other thing is, I'm trying to think of the right way to phrase this, but, the thing, and apologies in advance to my Wheel of Time fans and friends, because I know a lot of them absolutely loathe Game of Thrones comparisons, and I get it. I really do. The one reason I'm going to make a Game of Thrones comparison here is just about production quality. And when you watch Game of Thrones and, it has that HBO money and footing and, they're very, very practiced in what they do. HBO has been making those tiers of shows for a very long time, so it's a well-oiled machine, but there's a production quality to that series as you watch it. It really is top tier. It's almost on that film quality, that movie quality. And when I watch Wheel of Time, and I'm not usually someone that gets hung up on CGI or these sorts of things, but as I'm watching it, the quality level of it still, to me, hits like a TV show, your TBS version of fantasy, your FX or sci-fi. And there's great shows on those channels, and there's great things. So it's a nitpick. It really is. It didn't ruin the show for me. It wasn't anything of that. But, would I love to see that quality hit that more film level, that HBO level? Absolutely. So those were kind of the nitpicks I had as watching it, like really apparent on that 8th episode as you're watching it when it comes to some of that CGI. And there was a couple of things that broke my immersion when they all linked together. I actually laughed out loud because I thought they were kind of shaking back and forth a little bit. And it was just, it broke the immersion for me. So
I got to agree with both of those points. The quality, I'm just kind of hoping that the show becomes popular enough that they get to do the 8 seasons, and the further along they go, the more money they're going to get.
Sure.
That typically happens with a lot of shows. The more popular it gets, the more they throw money at it, and the quality, as far as the effects are just going to get better. There were moments, for example, the very first episode, the whole Trolloc attack, where it's just like, oh my God, these Trollocs look so awesome. And then you'll get a quick little clip of another one and you're like, wow, that didn't look great. And it just kind of went back and forth. It's like and I think a lot of it was the CGI. I think they just weren't at that level with the CGI. And as far as the pacing, I do agree with that. There's a part of me that feels like, holy crap, they got to Fall Dara really quick. I mean, granted, they skipped a whole month at one point. But it's like they get to Fall Dara and then frickin' Trollocs attack. I mean, they just raced through that part.
Yes.
And yet they spent so much time, they get to Fall Dara and they got like this frickin' scene. I got nothing against romance, but it's like, I don't need to see long drawn out scenes at this point in the show between Nynaeve and Lan and Rand. And it's just like, we understand,
Sure.
Especially the Lan and Nynaeve thing.
Mm-hmm.
That needs to simmer a bit. They don't need to be throwing that at. I mean, we need to get hints of it.
Yeah.
But, really season 3, it should be a Ross and Rachel type of, are they or aren't they? And don't just tell us they are right there before the first season ends.
Sure.
But other than that, I don't know. I'm still kind of up in the air with Loial. I love the guy, the way the dude is portraying Loial, but the look of Loial at this point, I'm not quite on board yet. And I think a lot of it is his hair.
Okay.
If he didn't have that curly hair, that curly blonde hair.
Yeah.
And then, we're going to talk spoilers. I'm going to jump right away to the last episode. And then it seems as if they kill him off by the end of the freaking season. And I'm going to be pretty upset if that's the case. Because he was starting to grow on me.
Sure.
But I don't think they utilized him very well so far in this first season. So I really hope they didn't kill him off.
Not at all. They haven't even begun to utilize him. And before I say it, I want to ask you, is it all right to spoil something for you that is in interviews right now? Or would you like?
Go ahead.
He is not dead. That was something that Rafe confirmed on I want to say it was first confirmed on the AMA, but It was an interesting quote from Rafe, I will say, because the way he put it is, I could never kill Loyal because he's one of my favorites. But at the same time, I do want to prepare readers for watching this show because people will die that do not die in the books. And that's very paraphrased.
Okay.
Yeah, but he definitely put it that way. And so what really concerns me more is, and I didn't actually think about it after I heard Loyal was okay. I'm like, okay, they're fine. And I encompassed everybody. But now I'm looking back and I'm like, what about Uno? No. What about Arishima? Are they still alive? Yeah. And those are really kind of cornerstone characters later on in the book. Little bit parts, but still cornerstone in their element. So that could be interesting.
Flamin' Uno and his cursing.
Absolutely. Or Dragonsworn, like there's a whole big element there. So
yeah.
Just to see where things go. I really am.
Yeah. And, to go back to Loyal real quick, the thing sure. when I read the books and when I'm listening to him again, the thing about Loyal that really endeared me to him is as old as he is compared to humans, he's like a freaking teenager for the Ogier. So he's very innocent. He has these moments of being very naive and innocent. And we haven't seen that yet. And I hope we really see a lot of that further on. I'm hoping now that I know that he's not dead, hopefully in season 2, though, maybe we'll even get a Loyal episode where we get more background on him. That would be fun because again, the way I can't think of that guy's name, the way he plays the character is perfect. The look, it's growing on me, but I'm not quite sold yet. Now let's talk about the changes they made to both Matt and Perrin, because one, I understood and I somewhat liked, and the other didn't really care for at all. And I'm going to let you guess who I liked and who I didn't.
Okay. I'm going to take, it doesn't even feel like a far leap here, but here's my guess. My guess is that you liked Matt and you didn't like Perrin.
Nope. Completely wrong.
Wow.
Here's the thing.
This is going to be fun.
Perrin at first so there's this line right away in the first episode when Matt and Perrin and Rand are together and Matt refers to Perrin as being married. And I thought, okay, well, that's a weird joke. And then he is married and not only is he not the blacksmith's apprentice, he and his wife are the blacksmiths and they're married and at first it really kind of confused me. Why would they do that? What was the point of that? And my feeling is because his character in the books turns into this whole, he hates the axe that he carries and he hates using it and he doesn't like killing, but he knows it's necessary, to defend himself or defend the ones he loves. And the way they kind of introduce that in the books is when he kind of goes crazy and kills that white cloak.
Sure.
And he kills a couple of white cloaks, but he starts to feel, guilty about that. And I think to really nail that in the series with what little time they have, well, let's just give him a wife and have him kill her on accident, So that's kind of like the whole Peter Parker thing. He's going to feel really guilty about that for most of the show. And I think for them, that was the quickest way they could get to that plot point for him, to that character point for him.
Sure.
The thing that makes me angry about Matt is just the fact that in the books, I don't like that they made him, his family was poor and living in squalor, and his dad was a real jerk and a womanizer, and his mom was a drunk, and she hated Matt and she hated his dad. And because of that, he was a thief. And, I preferred Matt more of just like a mischievous troublemaker who liked to pull pranks. In the book, his dad is a freaking horse trader and a very, very prosperous horse trader. And I don't know. I didn't like that. And I know in my heart that they're going to redeem Matt at some point, but he just was not a good character in this series. Granted, for most of it, he had that freaking dagger and that was part of it. But even I felt it was a weird choice there at the end for him not to go into the waves with them and to just stay behind and then go back to Shatter Logoth or however they pronounced it. I thought that was a weird choice, but I don't know. I think it's interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing where it's going. And and we're going to have a completely different person playing Matt.
We are.
in the next season. So who knows? I don't know. There was just a part of me that just, it's like they wanted to justify Perrin feeling guilty about using his axe, and they wanted to justify Matt being kind of a scoundrel. And they did kind of go to extremes on either end to justify both of those character traits. But the Matt thing bothered me more than the Perrin thing.
Oh, man. If I could weigh in on that, because this is kind of a can of worms topic, and I feel like the opposite side of your coin here, quite honestly. Honestly. So I feel the opposite, even though I agree with some of what you just said. I liked Matt. I didn't like Perrin as much, but I actually still... I ended the season feeling okay about where Perrin was at. Right after the first 3 episodes dropped, there was this big discussion I noticed online. I still kind of keep up with a lot of Wheel of Time stuff through Twitter, Twitter of Time, and shout out to all those wonderful, wonderful people. But there was a really good conversation about it. Brought up a term, to be honest with you, I didn't know anything about until I read about this, and I had to learn about fridging, as a literary, kind of device or whatnot. Yeah. And it really kind of came from Brandon Sanderson, kind of putting his thoughts out there about it. It was the one thing that he disagreed with Rafe on in that episode, and tried to get him not to do it. And actually, one of the things he mentioned in kind of the direct way he said it was, I hate to do Master Luhan dirty like that, but he actually had put up Master Luhan instead of Layla. Because, and his general thought was, I don't think the show is going to have enough time to properly deal with the, killing one's wife in that way. And I do resonate with that. As I watch it, it's such a heavy, heavy topic, has such gravity and they're already trying to put so much into this show that I can agree with that. I don't think there's going to be enough time to maybe properly, let's say, deal with that in, let's say, a respectable kind of way. However, I absolutely understand why they did it and what they're going for. And it is a way to accelerate, Perrin's, let's say, aversion to violence, his thoughtfulness in terms of, knowing how he can hurt other people. And so he has to be very methodical and thoughtful before he takes action and these sorts of things. So I really do see why they did it. I can agree with that. I can understand it. And at the same time, I can kind of see that other side and say, okay, well, the wife is really, really strong. Master Luhan even would have been kind of rough, but I do think that might have been a little better choice. But there might be, and this is going back to some of the very first things we said, there might be some things as the seasons go that make that choice make more sense as well. And so I am interested to keep watching and see that. When it comes to Matt, I actually really enjoyed the changes there. And some of the reasons I did is, they're all a little bit older. Yep. And being a little bit older, they have to be a little bit more established, let's say, in their character traits. So just imagine a Matt that stayed in Evansfield another 4 years and what he could have got up to. And then let's imagine a different turning of the wheel where his parents were not those horse traders, but kind of worse people, let's say. There's really redeemable traits in Matt as you watch the series. The way he looks at his sisters, the absolute trauma he has at what happened to the family as they were traveling. And, even while the dagger has overtaken him, that's a point of focus for him, a point of trauma. So there is still that fight in him of good versus evil. And I think once we come into the second season and once we start going with book 3 and forward, they're going to have a lot of ground to really build on. Honestly, as we talked about previously, Matt's my favorite character, but I don't like him at all until the 3rd book. And this season, I didn't like him at all, and it made it feel perfect.
You're swaying me. You're bringing me across to your line of thinking, because the whole I didn't even, and I feel bad about it as a person about this, but I didn't even think about that whole fridging aspect. And if you're, as a listener, if you're not sure what that means, back in the 90s, there was a run on Green Lantern when Kyle Rayner was the Green Lantern. And I wasn't reading that book back then, but one of his villains kills his girlfriend and stuffs her in his fridge. And he comes home to find his girlfriend dead in his refrigerator. And then I think it was Gail Simone, another comic book writer, who she had started a blog, I think before she even became a big comic book writer, called Women in Fridges. And it was all about this whole, this trope where in order to get your male lead the motivation to do what he needs to do in the movie or the book or the comic, you have to introduce a female character that he cares for and then kill her in a horrific way. And that's that, once you brought that up and that latched into my brain, and it's like, well, no, that's not something that we should be doing. And I do like the idea of Master Luhan, because think about it. If they were going to have him kill anybody, Master Luhan's from the book, it would have made more sense for him to have still been the blacksmith's apprentice. Granted, they are a bit older in the book than they were in the show. I'm getting mixed up in my brain. So yeah, and then the Matt thing. Yes, he was a thief, but I feel like he was doing that for his sisters. He wanted to get some lanterns for Beltane, and it's his redemption when he does, redeem himself. It's gonna mean that much more.
Absolutely.
So yeah, you swayed me.
You can't have a redemption without having a low point.
Right.
You've got to have that. So, one other thing that I think is worth pointing out, and it's conjecture at this point, quite honestly, but a lot of people have talked about how, when Matt didn't go into the Waygates the last time they filmed with Barney and the actor shift, and, a lot of people have stated those last two episodes probably were heavily rewritten. We still don't know what happened with Barney. Yeah. We might never know. At this point, I felt like we would have known if we were going to. It'll probably come out at some point. I hope he's fine. I hope he's okay. But I do think there was probably some rewriting. I do feel like something probably happened there, and they did rewrite a little bit. But I think it's going to work out. The other thing that was pointed out, and this actually came from an interview with Rafe, it's not Shadar Logoth that he's going back to at the very end. It's Tar Valon. He's actually going back to Tar Valon at the end, and that's what's going to set him up for the third arc.
Yeah, that's where the dagger is. That makes sense. That's where the dagger is. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. And since we've already given plenty of spoiler warnings, I'm not going to feel bad about saying it, but I'm excited because that should mean Tom will be right back in the mix, and Tom was absolutely one of my highlights of the show. Yeah, he was great in the show, but so poorly utilized, I felt. He was almost... And I don't know if they made this choice because of who they ended up casting in the role, but you'll notice instead of the harp and the flute, he had a guitar. Sure.
And he almost had a country boy feeling to him, but like a British country boy feeling.
I was about to say, he reminds me more of like a I don't know, almost like a Rolling Stone type, like more of that vibe,
Yeah.
Which I was okay with.
Yeah, I liked him. I would just wish he would have been in the series. I wish he would have been in the season a bit more. Sure. It was again another one of those changes that confused me because we're watching the entire first episode and I'm like, when is Tom going to come out? Sure. He left with them in the books and then we don't get him until episode 3, and we get him in episode 3 and 4, and do we get him in 5 as well? It's like 2 episodes. He's in and out.
Yeah, we only get him in those 2, and it hurt because he is one of my favorite characters. Yeah. But I will say every time I feel like Tom was on the screen, it was absolute dynamite.
Oh yeah, I really liked him. I just feel that his and I'm going to say air quote sacrifice.
Sure.
Because if we follow the books, he didn't die fighting that Myrddraal, but I felt like that would have meant a lot more had we been able to spend more time with them. Had we been able to, the person who's watching the show that's never read the books, if they would have been able to spend some more time with him and get to know him more and really start to love him as a character. And then he throws himself at that Myrddraal to save the 2, that would have, it had impact on us because it's very similar to the book, except for it happened in town and And it's funny to note that the little did you pick up on their names, the family?
Yeah. I was just trying to think of their names because I remember they're actually a fan. The Grenwells, yes.
Yeah, because Elsie Grenwell, who was the little girl, was actually their age in the book, and she ends up being she ends up going to Tar Valon.
Yes, I was about to say.
Is an Aes Sedai.
It's an Aes Sedai, exactly. Yeah, I did pick up on that. I couldn't think of it in the moment, but One thing you just said, I think could stretch for the whole series in a way, at least so far, in the fact that we didn't get enough time to get to know this person for that impact to matter. I feel like that on varying levels with a lot of different points in the book. Steppen, for example, and what does happen to Steppen is very sad. It did move me a bit, but at the same time, if I got to know him a little better, would have had more of him. And there's just so much they're condensing into these 8 episodes. I don't fault the season for it, but I do note that I do feel that when I watch it. Yeah. So basically, Amazon, please give them more time and more money.
Yes. And they really opened Lan up. You expect, based on the books, you expect him to just be this brooding, silent figure throughout the whole first season. But man, especially by the time you get to what happened to Steppen, but even up before then, he was talking a lot. He was showing emotions, and you do kind of need that on a TV show. Otherwise, you basically have The Witcher. I don't know if you've watched The Witcher, but that guy, I mean, that's who his character is. You can't blame Henry Cavill, but he's just like a block of wood because he has no emotions.
He is, but Henry does such a good job as Carol too, though. I mean, just nails it.
And he's a good-looking man.
He is.
He's easy on the eyes. Let's talk about some of the stuff we really liked about the show, and I'll mention right off the bat. And it quite surprised me, to be honest with you. It threw me through a loop because I'm so used to watching other fantasy type settings, but the inclusivity, I don't know if I'm saying that right. It was very inclusive. You had in freaking the Two Rivers alone, there were just so many people of different colors just represented everywhere. And it's like old school fantasy wouldn't have done that, like, Faldara, for example. Mm-hmm. If you read the book, they're all basically supposed to be like, maybe even Asian. Mm-hmm. And here we have Uno's got a white guy with blonde hair and it was very inclusive, and they were even really cool about homosexuality. They're just like, all right, whatever. I like when Rand, the episode where we meet Tom, and Rand is in that room with that barkeeper, and she's hitting on him, and she mentions she thinks he's with Matt, in a homosexual way, and Rand's just like, he's not, most shows would be like, oh no, that's no, we're manly men and we're friends and that's all there is to it. But they just, that and the whole the warders with the green Aja, and it's like, have you ever watched the show Schitt's Creek?
Yes, I have.
It's kind of like the way they handle it there. It's just like, yeah, he's gay, so what? It's like, it's just part of normal everyday life, and I think I like it when they include it, but they don't make a big deal out of it. It's just the way it is, and that's the way it should be. And I really appreciated that about the story, and I really appreciated just, it wasn't like your main cast wasn't just a bunch of white people and then maybe a person of color thrown in here and there just to round things out. I mean, there's a lot of color in this show, and I really appreciated that as well. Yeah. The Trollocs, when they were done well, they looked really good.
Sure.
I really like the Trollocs that ran on all fours, but the CGI that accomplished that wasn't very good.
Sure.
But they were creepy. The mirror draw was cool.
Absolutely.
I really think, we're talking about the whole Perrin's story and how that might come up again later down the road. We know that in the books he does meet another woman.
Okay.
What's her name? Fail.
Yes.
And they get married. And I bet that's going to be a sticking point to him. He's going to feel guilty about meeting this woman.
I'm sure.
Because he was married previously to the love of his life. And then he killed her with an axe to the belly. So I'm sure that's going to be a thing. Though, did you pick up, there almost seemed to be, when I was watching the first episode again, I don't know, it's almost like they were trying to hint at there was a little trouble in the marriage.
But they definitely were.
Yeah. So, which kind of bothered me, because it's like, all right, so we're not going to, like, they don't want us to feel that guilty about the fact that one of their main characters accidentally killed his wife because there was trouble in the marriage. But
that's not okay.
Yeah, that's not okay at all.
There's There's some interesting points on that. I've seen some fan theories that were interesting that I don't think will pan out. They struck me as interesting. Like one pointed out how it looked like Layla was kind of coming up behind Perrin at a point and accused her of very much a White Cloak sentiment, but accused her of being a dark friend. In other words, she was actually going to, and I don't really believe that's going to be the case, quite honestly. But it was something on Twitter that got a lot of traction, a lot of people talking about it there. Ultimately, again, I don't think that one's going to pan out at all there, but what I have seen a lot of talk about as well, and what is more likely is the whole kind of love triangle thought towards the end. And I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it either. Yeah. I felt solidly, it's just kind of a middling thing. It was okay. They're throwing that in there. There were some little moments in the book, and they're very fleeting. We're talking about a 14, 15 book series that are all huge, and we're talking about maybe 3 or 4 sentences, not even a full paragraph, but little references to Perrin maybe having just the slightest little bit of maybe some feelings.
And that happens in real life. That's not
exactly completely natural thing. Yeah. So it's not, let's say, out of bounds to build on that in the show and kind of build that out the way they have or whatnot there. But most likely, I think that's the insinuation there, that there was, because notice that also Layla was at the Forge, and the big thing at the White Spring in the first night. Now granted, it's Beltane, but also people are celebrating Egwene. And they're celebrating, her joining the women's circle. So that was kind of my interpretation, is she doesn't want to be anywhere celebrating Egwene. There probably is this little thing that kind of came out along the way. But I also do genuinely believe that Perrin was being honest when he looked Rand in the eyes and said, the only person I've ever loved is my wife. Yep. I even had the thought of, did Egwene have a crush for Perrin? And present that to Perrin, and he says no. And then the day that, him and Layla got together was the day that Rand and Egwene got together, which was where Rand kind of sourced those emotions and that problem from. That's probably not it either. They probably had a little bit of a mutual, thing, but nothing ever came of it. It's just a totally normal human thing. So
yeah, and you can be a guy who is just extremely close, good friends with a woman without any romantic entanglements being involved.
Absolutely.
But then the guy who, the girl who is the guy's friend, her boyfriend could read more into that than actually is there. And then the guy's wife could read more into that than it is actually there. And, it's very possible for troubles to arise out of nothing, ultimately, just more out of perception.
Exactly.
Than anything else.
Could I mention a couple things I absolutely loved about the show?
Yes. Fire away.
You brought up the diverse casting, and I want to touch on that. Not only is the casting just wonderfully diverse, and it was such a refreshing just breath of air in fantasy, I will say, but also, one thing you mentioned about how they did have, all different types of relationships. We have Swan and Moraine, and they were actually referenced as together in the books, in the prequel, but to actually build on that, to see that, just make that absolutely, we're not putting this on a pedestal, or we're not lowering this. It's just completely normal, completely commonplace. The way it should be was a breath of fresh air and wonderful and refreshing. Beyond that, just the actual casting, I think is one of the strongest points of the show for me. When you watch that, Rosamund as Moraine is incredible. And that, I want to say it's the 5th episode, maybe it's the 6th, because it's the one where Swan is in it heavily as well, and does come back as the Amulet Sea. But, watching her at work just built on that character in such a beautiful way. To see her is truly like an I Spy eye, just really like a spy in the Aes Sedai society, even to the point of, her own Aja. She's meeting with the sitter of her Aja and getting secret notes while she's sitting there with her, and even has secrets from her. And it's just really makes her so badass, quite honestly. But she nailed it. I feel like the Edmondsfield 5 nailed it. Is it Zoe that's playing Nynaeve? I forget the actress's name.
I don't remember her name, but yeah, so good.
Yes, and they all are. They all are. By the end of it, Perrin, if you watch that episode 8, and the way he has his shoulders hunched, and he almost looms like a wolf, looking like he's pacing, like an anxious wolf, just kind of pacing back and forth in a den, and I could visualize it. So really, my hat's off to all of them, and the job they did with those characters just absolutely took them right off the page for me. It was beautiful.
Yes, yes. Nynaeve is probably my favorite of all of them at this point, because she just kicked so much ass. Yes. I mean, she gets caught by a frickin' Trolloc, get dragged away by a frickin' braid. She gets away.
Yes.
The Trolloc chases her into that pool, and she just kicks his ass. It was so good. She was just really good throughout the whole thing. And Perrin, that's a good point, because he has moments where it's almost, you feel like he's just kind of a whiny, ineffectual, he's just like, "Ooh, I don't know, and I don't." But then when he gets mad, it's like you don't want to be in that room with him. The whole scene with him and Egwene and Eminvalda, the White Cloaks. Oh man, that was so good. And Egwene just kicks his ass and takes those rings from him.
Yes.
And I noticed when I was watching the first episode again yesterday, there's a moment in episode 1 when the Trollocs are raiding the village where, and I think it's they mentioned that it's Days Conger. There's a Trolloc eating somebody, and she comes up and she goes, you wanna feast on something, feast on this. And then all these women just come out and just kick this Trolloc's butt, man.
Yes.
It's great. They really, I think Robert Jordan did a good job of making strong female characters, but I think they've done an even better job here in the show.
Sure.
Nynaeve is probably my favorite of the whole group. I mean, next to Lan. Lan's a BA.
Lan is awesome. Lan is awesome. Them together is awesome. I'm really looking forward to the future of that. Even before Nynaeve gets dragged away by her braid, that first scene, I want to say where a Trolloc is kind of like roaring at her in Egwene.
Yeah.
And she just screams back, and it's just such a perfect Nynaeve moment. I'm like, that's Nynaeve right there. Just fierce to the very end.
And the fact that when at that point when she first starts fighting that Trolloc,
yes,
she's got that little knife, and she's not like stab. She just jumps in there and stab. Just I'm not gonna finish until you stop moving or you kill me. One of the two. She's there to protect those people, and that's what she's gonna do. And really like that about her.
Absolutely agree. Just so well done. It's like the equivalent of taking your Swiss Army knife to Godzilla, but she dives right in there.
She does it, man. No. Yes. Yeah, exactly. I really liked, we got to see Tam using his sword. That was pretty cool. And then the flashback where with the Aiel War, where we see Rand's natural mother and Tam comes and takes the baby. That was really cool. I'm really looking forward to seeing some more Aiel. I can't wait till we get to that part where we get to enter into their society and learn more about them and go. I hope they do the whole thing where Rand and Matt both go through those arches, and learn more about their past and, their past selves and all that. And
absolutely.
But what else did you like?
What else did I like? Well, you brought up probably my favorite scene of the whole show. Not to be the action heavy person, but that scene with Tigraine, right? His mother there. But where you actually see, Rand's mother giving birth while fighting off.
Yes.
It's 5, 6 different people, and it was truly a scene that rivals any action movie or fantasy, battles I'd seen before. It was really incredible. So I was definitely screaming, "Watch the spears" over it the whole time. Yeah. I'm so excited about Aiel. It just makes me that much more excited when Avienda and some of the other characters come.
That's going to be some good stuff. And how she'd like take out 2 or 3 guys, and then she'd have these labor pains that would almost knock her onto her back. And then 3 or 4 other guys would show up, and then she'd just take them out real quick, and then deal with the labor pains a little bit more. It was really good. It was really good stuff.
It was so good. Other things I really liked. I made a mental footnote to come back to this, but I actually really like how they did Loyal, and I had to think about it for a while. The problem I actually had with him at first was the writing, was the dialogue, and it was because that very first scene where he meets Rand, I was like, man, he's really heavy-handed with this humans are so hasty thing. You know, I had this mental state when I watched the show the first time where I kept trying to put my own, personal thoughts off to the side, and I wanted to watch it as somebody that had never read the books before. I kept trying to imagine that, and so as I was watching, I was like, man, they're just really heavy-handed with this. But as I've been re-listening to Eye of the World, because I got the one that Rosamund actually narrated, I've been listening to that, and I just re-listened to that, this past week, and I'm like, oh, he's actually written that heavy-handed. He mentions that at least 50 times in that first meeting, so that's actually pretty spot on with the book. But I actually like the look of him. He really looks like he's kind of carved from a block of wood almost, these sorts of things. And the tuft of hair on top makes me think of, kind of like a bonsai tree or something, And so it all kind of fit, if he's going to be a singer, if he's going to be able to do these sorts of things, then it kind of does make sense there. The actor that plays him, just like everyone else in the series, phenomenal. So, I mean, where it counts, I mean, that show is hitting on 11 in terms of those.
Yep. So, yeah, and in his look, like I said, it was growing on me. Yeah. We just didn't get him enough in the season for it to really sink in that's Loyal. It just really threw me through a loop when he first appeared. It's like Rand walks into that library, and I can see that dude back there behind the shelf, and he starts talking. I'm like, all right, it's Loyal. And then he pops up, and I'm like, what the flip is on top of his head? I think that's the only thing I had an issue with was that long, curly blonde, like gold hair almost. But, he'll grow on me because like I said, the guy doing Loyal is doing such a phenomenal job that it's not going to take much time at all for me to look past the hair, and it'll just become a part of him.
Absolutely. People think the same thing when they see me, they have to get past the hair, sometimes the face. But as you get to know me, something else I super, super loved, and it just popped in my head. One, the cold open where you see Lil Theron and you see the Age of Legends.
Yes.
Mwah, chef's kiss, mind blowing. Like, the conversation itself, okay, that's fine, that's good, that's great. But then just that split 3 seconds of looking out the window and showing the viewer, hey, by the way, this is the past. This is thousands of years ago. Take a look at it. And then did you catch in episode 1 when they're first opening up the old skyscrapers in the landscape?
Yes, I did.
And so somebody did a side-by-side of those things, of the Age of Legends and those skyscrapers. And like, look, these are the same buildings. And they really do look very similar. It's just so cool. So
that's cool.
Those things, those really fine details they paid attention to, just knocked it out of the park for me. Really.
Yeah, and I wonder how many people who'd never read the book before was watching that scene, and when they went out the window and you see the flying cars, they're like, "What?" It just blew up,
Absolutely.
That's that's kind of, I don't know if have you ever read any of the Shannara books?
I have not, actually.
That's, I mean, if you read the first one, it's like, all right, this is a Lord of the Rings ripoff. But the further he goes into these books, it's all set in our future. There was a point in our future where there was some kind of nuclear war or something, and people started to mutate, and the elves have always been around, but as modern science built up around us, they had to go into hiding, and it's the hints to the past in those books is it kind of reminds me a little bit of Lord. It's not the same because it's our past. Yeah. So it's like, gas powered cars and whatnot. It's not flying, whatever they called them in the books. But I've always found that kind of stuff interesting. I've always really enjoyed post-apocalyptic kind of stories.
Same.
And then what I enjoy even more are like fantasy worlds, where you see the elements like the skyscrapers that have freaking foliage all over them and ruined, giant bridges that are in pieces and stuff, with, trees and stuff growing through them and junk like that. I've always enjoyed that kind of crap. So
absolutely
for him to do that in these books, and then for them to show it in the show, I really appreciated that.
Absolutely. There's I feel so bad I'm forgetting his name, but the name he's under on YouTube is Unraveling the Pattern. Does a really, really wonderful job of just these different in-depth dives on Wheel of Time. But one thing he's actually mentioned in some of his videos, and I haven't caught to myself in the book, I'm going to be honest with you. Maybe I need to watch his videos a little bit deeper to see them. But some of the introductory, just big, broad overviews of concepts in the Wheel of Time. He talks about the ages, and, of course, the second age is the Age of Legends. But supposedly the first age, which is barely referenced in the books, but is referenced in little glimmers and really buried Easter eggs, is our age. And in the Wheel of Time, and I haven't caught them personally, and this is multiple people that have said this, there are references to our world, but they're very buried. They're like, BC type information for us if you were thinking about world history. So it's really buried. But I think his name is Lauren. And
I just found him on YouTube and I've subscribed to him. I'll put the link to the YouTube channel in the show notes.
Perfect. Yeah, they're really good. They're almost like documentary style videos. I really enjoyed watching them. But it's the kind of thing. Even though I read the books and watch the show, this is the kind of things I fall asleep to at night. I put on a YouTube video and pass out. But I've really enjoyed kind of those deep dives, and learning that was particularly fascinating, even though I haven't caught it myself yet. So.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way, because I can be really into a series like that and have read the books multiple times, but I'm not much of a deep thinker, really. And
Sure.
So a lot of the stuff that people can find, hidden within the text, it's I'm never going to find it. And if I do, if I feel like I found something that's, oh, did you realize that? And everybody else knew it before I did. And I feel like I'm like, I discovered something. And yeah, but you discovered America 400 years after everybody else did. It's really not that big of an accomplishment. So I just subscribe to that dude. So I'll check out some of his videos, because I do like to, when you're into a series like that and somebody can come along and point out stuff that you've missed, that just makes the story richer, heck yeah, I'm going to be all over that.
Same. Absolutely. I really enjoyed, not just watching that guy's videos, but everybody, the whole community on Twitter of Time. I'm in a few Facebook Wheel of Time groups, and I'm, involved with a lot of people through Twitter of Time, just talk to them and whatnot, kind of pulled into that world. Very much recommend the latter over the former, if you enjoy, Wheel of Time show particularly. But through just talking with those people and some of their ideas and thoughts and whatnot, it's really inspiring. I had to log out of it during the show because it was too much for me. I was like, okay, I want to watch this myself and form my own opinions, and then I want to hear yours. But now that the show is finished and the first season is wrapped, and I'm logging back in, it's really, really awesome to check that. So shout out to everybody on Twitter of Time. Y'all are awesome. I love y'all.
I just found that hashtag. I'm gonna
follow that for sure.
That sucker. Yeah.
I want to make sure I give them much love, because I'm going to tell them all to retweet about this podcast as much as possible. So.
Yeah.
There it is, folks. I ended it right there. Like I said, we'll be back next Thursday with part 2 of our discussion. There will be another episode in between. So this is episode number 223, and part 2 will be on episode 225. So there will be another episode out on Tuesday that has nothing to do with the Wheel of Time. And then we'll get back to the Wheel of Time, the second part of our discussion, on Thursday next week. That's going to be Thursday, the 20th of January. I hope you're enjoying it so far. We had, like I said, we talked for 2.5 hours, and he is such a sweet guy. And the one thing I always learn whenever I do an episode where I'm talking to somebody and I go back and I'm doing the editing, I realize that I talk way too much, and I always get worried. And I worry that I am annoying the person on the other side. But this is the second time Sulfur has sat down with me to talk Wheel of Time. So I'm sure he'll be back. I would love to have him back. He seems to want to come back. So he doesn't seem like the type of guy that's going to lie to my face. Well, through video anyway. Yeah, super nice guy. Love talking to him. We probably could have talked for another hour, but 2.5 hours was almost just too much. So at some point, he'll be back on, and we'll talk about something else. We'll see what other kind of nerd type stuff he might be into. And then we'll get him back on the show to talk about other stuff. All right, this is the episode. Join me here next week. On Tuesday, you're going to get ElfQuest Part 11. Hopefully, I hate saying that out loud because I don't know what's going to happen between then and now. I haven't recorded it yet, but that's on the schedule. You'll get Tuesday, the 18th, ElfQuest Part 11, and then Thursday, the 20th, Part 2 of this Wheel of Time talk. Until then, folks, my name is Steven, and I am just another fanboy. Be nice to each other.
Bye-bye, Daddy.
Bye-bye, Daddy.
Good job.